Hey, folks, welcome back. This is Chris in Central Texas, just north of Dallas, for the one-year anniversary of President Trump's executive order addressing the egregious actions of the government of South Africa, during which he suspended all foreign assistance to South Africa, and he granted refugee status for South Africans suffering from unjust racial persecution. In the past year, we've seen approximately 2,000 South Africans, predominantly white South Africans, about half Afrikaner, half English speakers. Also, some coloreds and Indians make it over here because of racial persecution. During the past year, this story has been falsely reported by mainstream media, from the New York Times to the Washington Post to every outlet here in the United States, especially on broadcast media, and the same in South Africa with the legacy media outlets there, talking rubbish about the program. From the very outset, as I said, when President Trump issued his executive order on the 7th of February, 2025, from the very outset, I said that I hope it's for more than just Afrikaners, because other people are suffering because of the government. And I would hope that it would extend to ethnic minorities. On the 10th of February, the U.S. Embassy published the standard. It was Afrikaners and racial minorities, and it has been the same ever since. Only now, a year later, are South African media networks admitting the truth and starting to report the reality that it's not just Afrikaners and certainly not farmers, which was the lies spread by Ronald Lamola and government officials from all over South Africa for the past year. But here we are now, a year into this. 1 year later. And the bottom line is that the program, from many people's perspectives, has been a bit slow, to be honest. But you have to understand that this is an unusual situation. It's in-country refugee status. We do this occasionally. We've done it for Cubans. We've done it for folks from Bosnia and Herzegovina and a couple other locations. Normally, the image, which is not an entirely accurate image that people have of a refugee, is someone who flees a conflict zone to a neighboring third state where they have safe haven, and then they try to become a refugee to be relocated around the world, and they register with the United Nations. That is the most common way, but in-country status happens where things are particularly egregious and governments prey upon their citizens or they're victims of persecution from other ethnic groups. And that's what's been happening in South Africa. So the image of, downtrodden, brown-skinned people fleeing from a conflict, living in tents in Kenya, having fled Somalia, or in Uganda, having fled from South Sudan, is not applicable in this case. Put yourself in mind of the Jews who fled after Kristallnacht in Germany in the 1930s. 95,000 of them came to America. Many of them were quite wealthy. They were all white, of course, the Jews who fled Germany. Now, people today, especially political left, trying to apply the standard that you can only be a refugee if you're poor and if you're brown, that's ridiculous. You can be a refugee if you suffer from religious, political, racial, and other sorts of persecution, which is the case for these South Africans. A lot of arguments and fairy tales being stated about, well, these people don't qualify. They haven't been vetted. That's poppycock. As a former federal law enforcement official who did investigations, background investigations, I can tell you that these investigations are quite thorough. They're quite thorough. And in fact, a lot of the refugees who've been interviewed and gone through the process, when they're interviewed by USCIS agents who have the information from their background investigations, they're oftentimes surprised at just how much the U.S. government officials know about them personally, whether it's social media or it's them being arrested at 18 because they had marijuana or they got a speeding ticket. They know about these things, or there was a dispute with a neighbor. They do thorough background investigations. And those people in America who are so-called experts and pundits who talk about this and claim that these are not thorough investigations are lying to you because they have a dishonest agenda. The bottom line here, folks, as I've said from the beginning, I don't encourage anyone to leave South Africa, but it's also not my place to tell people not to leave South Africa. It's a truly amazing country with the most amazing people, topography, mineral resources, human capital. Unfortunately, it's being destroyed and run into the ground. And really, in many ways, much of the country is turned into a gangster state. We have a refugee who is already approved and supposed to be coming over, who was in a very serious incident last night, whose life is in jeopardy right now. And I'll share more about that when I'm able to. But it's really sad, people who are already approved to come over and waiting to come. It's a difficult, lengthy, challenging process. And those who've gone through it know exactly what I'm talking about. Some people put in a PRM email in February of last year, then did the statement of interest when it became available on the 12th of May when the 59ers arrived in America, and even then did an intake questionnaire after the 4th of November, and still are not here. That is not unusual. That is actually the norm for refugees, and I don't think a lot of people appreciate that. So for those of you who are interested in the program, I'd ask, all I can share with you is patience, and hopefully your case will be reviewed and you'll get a trip over here. But each and every day, people are arriving in America from South Africa, and I don't really care what CNN or what News 24 or what Ronald Lamola or Rebecca Davies or any of these other people have to say about it. These are legitimate, lawful, legal refugees who've been properly vetted. And if they did lie and there is something that's untrue, it gets discovered, then those people leave their status, they're sent back. Also to date, there are no refugees that have returned to South Africa that we're aware of. The U.S. government confirmed at the end of December that not a single refugee who had arrived in the States had returned to South Africa. Fairy tales, rumors spreading about that, all sorts of lies about this program. So once again, on the anniversary of President Trump's executive order about South Africa, which ended foreign assistance, and also granted refugee status for Afrikaners and South African racial minorities suffering from unjust racial persecution, I wish all of you in South Africa the best of luck, and everyone who's arrived here in America, welcome to America and a good start. We're here in Dallas, just north of Dallas, for the meet and greet. Starts at 12 Central Time, which will be 8 p.m. South Africa time. We're going to attempt to live broadcast that, at least the festivities when we get started. And I hope that you can join us for that. So God bless and have a good day. From Texas, this is Chris saying cheers.